All right, Mr. Chair, you are now live.
Okay, the Board of Port Wardens will come to order. I'm Gene Goddard, the chair. We have with us John Butler, Scott Anderson, and Robert Shapiro, which gives us a quorum. I understand Willie Sampson, the vice chair, is on his way and will join us as soon as he can, sometime in 10 or 15 minutes. We also, I guess, we do have Tammy Hook, Kerry Berger, Kevin Scott, and Sally Nash with the city all with us. Fellow Port Wardens, the next item is approval of the agenda. I would like to make a motion to leave the agenda as it is and go through the minutes and the findings of facts. And if Willie doesn't show up, then we will have a question about whether we go ahead and go through, like we did last week, go through the new business and then return to the Creek Drive, or we just proceed. My concern is Willie may not be able to vote if he misses some of the testimony after having been in 4 or 5 of the other meetings. So if it's okay with you, I move we approve the agenda as it is, and then we may revisit it later on.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Scott
Second.
moves and John seconds. Okay, we have the minutes from February the 23rd. I have reviewed them and I really have no concerns. So does anyone have any changes, additions? If not, can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Mr. Butler moves to approve, and I have a second from
I'll second that motion, please.
Scott Anderson. So all in favor, aye. Aye. So the minutes are approved. We next have findings of fact, and we have 6 of those. And I've reviewed those myself, and I had no particular concerns about them. So if anyone has anything to add or any concerns, can you please let me know? If not, I'd like to have a motion that we approve.
I'll move we approve.
Mr. Butler.
I'll second that motion.
Shapiro and Mr. Anderson both second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
So the minutes are approved. Gentlemen, I would like to, at this point, move we amend the agenda and start on the new business until Willie arrives, unless we have significant objection from either the parties or from any of my board members. If not, I move.
I would have.
Okay, Mr.
I would
Butler.
second that motion if you're making a motion.
I
That's
make
all.
that motion.
You didn't put it in the terms of the move.
Just to chime in real quick, you have to do a motion to reconsider the approval of the agenda. And so then everyone has to vote to reconsider it, and then you amend the agenda. It's a little bit of a complicated process. I can walk you through it, but you have to reconsider the approval of the agenda. Once everyone votes yes on that, then you amend the agenda to.
I move to reconsider the agenda. All in favor? Aye. The agenda is reconsidered. I move that the agenda be altered to start on the new business until Willie Sampson arrives, and then we will revert to the old business. I make that as a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second, all in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
And Kerry, thank you. Don't hesitate to keep me in regular order during today's meeting. Okay, new business. The first item is the Stinson application. And so I guess we can let them into the room and start on that. And that's Mr. Stinson, and I guess Carl Course, who has been before us.
Which item is this?
Mr. Chair, can I ask which item you're referring to in the agenda?
Yes, it's the first item, the William Henry Stinson application at 212 Norwood Road.
Port 21004.
The listings I have, Mr. Corse, who is here. And I don't know if Mr. Mr. Corse, is Mr. Stinson going to be here, or are you going to present it?
I thought he was going to be here, but if he's not, I will do my best to represent him.
Okay,
I just promoted him forward, just brought him forward for you guys.
okay, let me wait till I see him on the, oh, there he is. I don't see him, but I see his name.
Here. Hello.
Oh, hi. Okay, Mr. Corse, Mr. Stinson, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth to the Port Wardens to the best of your ability upon the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, if you will briefly tell us what you're trying to do and present the application.
Sure. Mr. Stinson lives at 212 Norwood Road. He has an existing pier. We propose to remove the existing hammerhead platform and 2 existing piles. In the place of the platform, to construct a 10-foot long by 20-foot wide L-head platform, to install 2 boat lifts with their associated pilings, and that all of this work is approximately a maximum of 82 feet channelward of the mean high water line.
Okay, I have no questions. Do any of my Port Wardens have any questions?
I have a question for Mr. Force. The memo from Kevin Scott says it complies with Title 15. I'm looking at the drawings, and I have drawings, so I'm looking on my computer here. I looked at them previous to the meeting also. It's not clear to me how the lateral lines were computed. I mean, it states they were, but I can't even see adjacent property corners. And I'm just wondering, can you describe how the lateral line was constructed?
Yeah. Could I share my screen?
Can you hear me? I guess you can. Yeah, we had that laid out by Drumlica.
Well, let me interject in that, and that is that Drumlica did a plat some time ago where they computed the lateral line in question. It's a big property, and it kind of turns the corner. So one lateral line is really the one in question, which is along. The city has a 40-foot public right-of-way it's a paper road called Essex Road that is the adjoining property to the north. And I provided Kevin, and maybe it's updated and you didn't get it, with a lateral line. It's actually revised from the Drumlica.
Right. Carl, I think you can share your screen.
Yeah, is it okay? I just wanted to ask permission first.
I think you should, if the
Okay,
chair.
let me do
doesn't
that.
mind.
Sure, you can share your screen.
Okay.
I'm not sure
sharing-
John can see it, but
Can you tell me if you can see this?
I can.
Okay, so what I was starting to describe is that this is the corner of Mr. Stinson's property currently, and here is his existing pier. The city owns, and I'm circling things with the little hand in the PDF, if you can see that. This is the 40-foot public right-of-way that the city of Annapolis holds, and they're calling it Essex Road, paper road. There's a dash line that was done by Drumlica previously that actually we recomputed. So what we did was took the property line from the public right-of-way, as well as the property line to the now not adjacent property, but the property on the other side of the public right-of-way, and went to compute the lines. And what I did in this drawing was every degree that I list is a degree from zero, horizontal 360. So this property line is at 252. This property line, if moving this way, is at 60. If moving this way, is at 240. And what we did was compute the lateral line between Mr. Stinson's property and the public right-of-way property, found that the public right-of-way lateral lines on both sides result in a width at the harbor line that is less than 25 feet. So actually this line here is the 25-foot line, width line. So we recomputed the lateral line and it is at negative 22 degrees. And it results in, and did the one on the other side just to see how it was affected, results in a City of Annapolis lateral line that goes parallel when it hits the minimum 25-foot width here. So the riparian, we have a 5-foot setback from the riparian line, the new line, which is at negative 22 degrees coming off of the corner of Stinson's Pier. Does that answer your question or did I miss something?
No, that was good. I'm on I'm on my phone, unfortunately, because of my better service there than on the Wi-Fi for a computer. But
So everything is really
yeah, but
small.
getting close. But if you could submit that as part of the record, I'd like that. I think it would be helpful to have that with the application.
Excellent. I'll stop sharing my screen now unless anyone else has some questions.
No, but for the record, that will be admitted into the record along with the staff report on this application.
And I will send a PDF to Kevin just in case he doesn't. I think he has this and we talked about it, but I'll send another email PDF to him just in case.
Yeah, John, just for your comfort, I'm sitting on a big screen and it looks appropriate and not confining to the pier at all. But anyway, that you will get to see it before we deliberate on this application.
I can
What is
see
this
it well
called?
enough on my phone.
What
Okay,
is this called? What's the map called? I'm sorry.
the map.
What's on the screen? What is that?
This is an exhibit. It's a Port Wardens exhibit, but it's a lateral line analysis for the Stinson property.
And it's a good example of actually having to go through the modification to unacceptable lateral lines.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments from our Port Wardens? Any comment from the public? I see nobody. So with that, we will keep the record open until our next meeting where we will deliberate. And so, gentlemen, we thank you very much on this application.
Mr. Godley, could you just take 10 seconds to explain to Mr. Stinson that what that means in keeping it open until the next deliberation?
Yes, we will accept further written comment until the next meeting, not oral comment. And we will take all of that composite and will deliberate, the Port Wardens will deliberate and make a decision at the next meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate the.
That's, I'm sorry I didn't make that clear. We've gone through this a few times now, and so I skipped over that, but thank you very much. So you are excused and we will complete this next month.
Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed that Mr. Sampson has now shown up. So we have a quorum, and as our motion said, we will revert back to the original agenda, and that will bring us to the 924 Creek Drive application. And I would like to say that we will try to find out our paper, and we will admit into the record the Mr. Shaler's memoranda and Ms. Dr. Nash's memoranda in answer to our questions. And contrary to my normal proceeding, I would be happy to hear any of my Port Wardens have any issues, questions, or want to make comments before I make my comments. I guess I'm mostly looking at John. These were considerably to answer the issues that you had raised, and I'm more than happy.
Mr. Chair, can I just jump in? We also have Ed Hartman, who's an attorney representing the Blue Heron Cove condominiums on the line. And he also, I think, has an answer to those questions for you as well as the adjacent property owner.
Well, the record is not open right now. We're, the wardens are deliberating. If you have any questions?
Didn't you ask specific to those 3 points that you had about the piling and the easement at the last hearing?
We asked for written submissions, yes, and I think we have all the written submissions before us.
Okay.
Are there further written submissions that we did not see?
It was the city's response and the applicant's response.
Yeah, those are the written submissions we asked, for the record. If Mr. Hartman will stand by in case we have any questions for him, then we would be we would glad for him to stand by. Pending anyone else's comments, if I can find some of my drawings. Well, let me just say, I think given the submissions we have had, the written submissions and answer our questions, to me, this revolves down to one, is there actually a public access at this current time, given the fact that that there has not been an easement that has been approved by the city. And so Dr. Nash's answered our questions, referred to there will be, it's in process, and I can't find the exact language of it, but basically it does not have, we do not have an easement at the current time, to my understanding. And if not, then that probably doesn't satisfy the requirement of the new ordinance that we have a public access, so we have to take those things into consideration. Secondly, I am bothered by the fact that if the applicant were to moor a boat of, say, a 10, 15-foot berth on his bulkhead, which he's entitled to do, as opposed to having a floating kayak access, that there would be no question about his ability to restrict that developable waterway, what have you. Third is in regard to looking at all the criteria, I can't find anything that would smack of environmental concerns. So I think we're reduced down to navigable navigation and impeding navigation and congestion. And the city recommendation of approval conditioned the approval upon not blocking access for small watercraft such as kayaks and canoes, etc., which in the year that it's been in existence, no one has come before us to indicate that there has been any navigable concerns about this area. So I'm finding it, and I'm more than happy to go through all the criteria, but I'm struggling within myself to try to find any reason why under the code, including the new ordinance, we would have to deny this. I'm also concerned that this application was submitted in September. It's been before us for deliberations over 6 months. There have been some change conditions, the new ordinance, for example, but at some point we should make a decision so we don't deprive a homeowner of their riparian rights. So those are my concerns, my deliberations, and before making a motion, I'd be more than happy, to hear my fellow port wardens, because everyone has their own concerns. And so with that, I will yield the floor to anyone who wants to talk. John, would you please proceed?
Yes, I wanted to, I guess, make some comments. I think access was raised is the whole reason why this came before the port wardens and as a form of application after having been installed was the concern over access. And we heard testimony about access. And when I went back to listen to testimony before our the meeting of February, there was this, one of the reasons I asked about that piling is that in that testimony, the applicant was we were talking about moving the kayak ramp launch a little bit further down the bulkhead. And the comment by the applicant was that that would still impede access because I don't remember the specific wording. I didn't write it down, but because of the piling, whatever. So there was even an acknowledgement, I think, from the applicant that we had an access issue. Now, but my concern is looking at the city memo and the photograph that one of the public submitted. The real impediment to that access is the Heron Cove condominium, third slip. I mean, I still, it's interesting, of all the photos we have, and we have all kinds of aerial shots, we never see one with the whaler tied up to that bulkhead. So I didn't realize that the applicant actually used that piling. My question about that piling was because we have several different photos that show a line going from a piling at the bulkhead of Heron Cove out to that piling, the piling that's actually the applicant's piling. And that line and the boats that use that slip is what blocks the access much more than the kayak dock. I do have a question whether or not that kayak dock could be moved out a foot or two without impeding his docking, where he is. But I think it's really the access issue that's been raised, I think, is really an enforcement issue for the city, not something for the port wardens to resolve, because it has to do with I think, with Heron Cove encroaching on the public access that they granted. So I guess I do have a question of whether or not that kayak launch could be moved a foot or two, 3 feet further along the bulkhead without affecting the use of it by the applicant. Would be a question I would have.
Can we ask Mr. Shaler that specific question? On behalf of the applicant, I assume the applicant will be happy for Mr. Shaler to answer that. Could that be moved, pick 1 to 3 feet?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Butler, certainly I don't want to speak for Mr. Parham. We did talk about that. He does have a whaler that does tie up. And to your point, Mr. Butler, I believe he submitted to Mr. Scott some color photos showing the Boston whaler. You can imagine what it is. It's just a small Boston whaler. I think it's a 17-foot Montauk, but Mr. Parham is here and he can speak to that directly. Moving it would potentially push it closer to the whaler. Not that we're looking to create a problem here. Could it be moved a foot? Sure. But I think you've hit the nub here. If there is any navigable access for public use, assuming that exists, that may more relate to a different matter between the city and Blue Heron, not Mr. Parham. But Mr. Parham's on, so I'm going to let Mr. Parham speak to your question directly on the kayak platform. Gary?
Yeah. Hello. I think the challenge isn't, can we put these two items next to each other and have them fit along the bulkhead like two boats would? The challenge is that it's a kayak launch, right? And so there needs to be some space to depart and come back again on that floating dock. So that would be the challenge with moving it.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's hard for me to visualize because I don't see as I mentioned, I've never seen a boat in any of the photos I've seen, so it's hard for me to.
Yeah, I think there were some photos submitted several hearings ago in one of the packets.
Yeah, I've seen those photos. I'm going to take the liberty, since John mentioned Blue Heron, and to be sure we don't exclude someone, and ask Mr. Hartman if he would like to comment on that issue as opposed to larger issues, since we restricted public and party comment to these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of Blue Heron Cove. I guess just a couple of points. I'm a little concerned about that the Port Wardens is going off on a direction to render opinions and perhaps even legal opinions regarding an interpretation of a legal document reported among the land records, which is that declaration, which simply says public access. I know Mr. Shaler and I share the same view from Greg Neck Yacht Club, which is a very important case, which establishes that there are no riparian rights. And therefore, the whole concept of whether or not this third slip is to be discussed is really beyond the jurisdiction of this body, but it's also clear by law that there is no actual riparian right attributed to anyone in the public access. And therefore, they do not have the right to launch a kayak or any other type of small boat. They don't have the right to climb in the water. They have the right to walk down there and look at it. Without any specific grant of riparian rights, they don't have those rights. So therefore, the question of whether or not and to what extent this board would take into consideration public access is moot, because the public access discussed by the declaration is one over land. And this body does not have jurisdiction over land rights, easements, rights of way. Those are specifically to be addressed in a complaint for declaratory relief in the Circuit Court of Anne Arundel County. If there is an aggrieved party who files an appropriate action against my client, then that would come before that court, but not here. This court has the authority to simply reject or deny Mr. Parham's application, which we support, by the way. He is entitled to the full exercise of his riparian rights. But getting off into this concept that somehow the third slip of our property, when we're not even a party to this process, is somehow impeding rights of yet other third parties, one is legally incorrect and beyond the jurisdiction of this board and beyond the scope of this application. So I would respectfully request that that topic be dropped and that the concept of what Blue Heron's riparian rights are be left to a different body that has the legislative authority to determine those rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman, and thank you for restricting your remarks. And I I take your point as I've read all the legal memoranda, and I'm not in any position, or the Port Warden, I'm not in any position to pass judgment on what access to the water, view the water, riparian rights, easement ends at water's edge. Those are not within my purview to decide. Do I have any other comments from the Port Wardens? If not, I will be happy to make a motion. John?
I'm trying to get muted here so I can say yes. I'm glad Mr. Hartman raised the issue of the rights of an easement, because that was a question I asked our city attorney to answer to, and I never saw any comment. I don't know if there's two sides to that, or if it's, widely held that the easement is treated with the equivalent of a property owner with regard to Title 15. So I don't know if Carrie has any comment to say on that.
Yeah, I just want to point out that the memo that was submitted by Dr. Nash was in consultation with the Office of Law, not me, since I'm the counsel to the Port Wardens, but it was with the city attorney, Michael Lyles. So and Dr. Nash can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they sort of collaborated on those responses that Dr. Nash submitted. So there is the Office of Law did weigh in on those issues that you requested.
Oh, I didn't see that in that part in the memo. Let's see here.
I don't think the memo is that detailed to pass a judgment on what easement rights are. It's more generic at that. I have a hard time getting there because, frankly, judging from Dr. Nash's memo, there is no easement at the time we're making a judgment on this application. Dr. Nash, do you want to? I don't want to presume to interpret your document. So do you have a comment on that?
I just wanted to say that Carrie is right. I did work with Office of Law on the memo. There is an easement. It's just that not held by the city, but we are working on that, working through that process.
Okay. With that, I would like to, unless anyone has any other concern, I want to make sure everyone deliberates on all the various criteria.
Yeah, I
including-
was just gonna chime in and say if to make sure that you guys touch upon all of the criteria that's set forward in the code and make sure you kind of touch on everything. There's a little bit that was touched on, but not necessarily everything. And I think for purposes of making the record clear that needs to be thoroughly discussed.
Well, if I could find your memo, Carrie, I would go down them one by one. But I would like to, I will put it in part of my motion, and that, unless anyone disagrees.
Well,
John?
I'm just, Carrie, what did you say, or was it Dr. Mash, about the, working with the Office of Law? I'm still trying to catch up here, sorry. There was something that the Office of Law is still working on, or?
I just said that the memo I sent, I worked with the Office of Law on the responses.
Because that didn't really address this question of what's standing. I mean, I hear what Gene is saying is that the easement doesn't exist yet, so maybe the question is moot. But what rights does an easement have with regard, like to Title 15 and viewing riparian rights? But I mean, we've heard Mr. Hartman's and Mr. Schaller's, opinion. I was looking for an opinion from the city, but it seems like we're not getting that.
I mean, okay, so if you want an answer to that in a general sense, I'm happy to do that outside of this application here, but I don't think it is relevant at all to this application because it's been sort of thoroughly stated that the easement doesn't exist. So it shouldn't be really something that you would need to take into consideration for the deliberations as to what rights are sort of attendant to an easement that is not in existence here.
I understood it as even if there was an easement, we're not to rule on land-based issues anyway.
But it's not a land-based issue if there are rights that extend into the water. But you're right, Carrie. We don't have an easement, unfortunately, so.
Easement. We're not,
So let me go through a few questions just so we can make the record clear. We have not found whether the structures are sufficiently substantial and lasting, or we have not found that they're not substantial lasting, whether they will cause water pollution or erosion, whether it has a negative effect on marine life, wildlife, conservation, water pollution, erosion, and the questions we have before us are whether or not it affects the use of other riparian owners, which rights of other riparian property owners, which we have not found, or it doesn't have a concern about proposed commercial or industrial use. So the questions before us is, does it render navigation too close and confined, or whether it impedes navigation by the public from a, let me get the legislation here, point of public property or easement area, or whether it proposed use causes too much congestion on the waters. I would make a motion that we approve this application with a stipulation that it not impede navigation, which is a change from the city's recommendation that it not block navigation. Is there, I didn't hear a second, so is there another motion? Well, let me try that again.
I'll second that, Gene.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. So Scott, Robert, I think Willie, I didn't see you. Oh, there's Willie. Okay. So it is unanimous 5-0 that we approve this application with the stipulation that it not interfere with impede navigation. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank everyone for your help. We will now revert back to the memoranda.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Board.
Mr. Chairman, board members, appreciate it.
Thank everyone. The next application is the Hendrickson at 129 Lafayette Avenue.
Sure, some a napkin, maybe, or I don't know.
Guys, I'm having the hardest time juggling all my paper here.
Yeah.
Okay. This is going to be Lars Hendrickson, and I think Dan Larian is going to present. Let's see.
Yes, sir.
There's Dan.
Mr. Chair, let you know, I did pass on 2 written public comments this afternoon, and one person signed up to speak, Mr. Dirk Garrett's.
Okay, I have those, and we will make those along with the staff report part of the record. So, Dan, is your client going to be with us, or can I just swear you in?
Just myself.
Okay, you'll be on the next 4 applications. So,
Yes, sir.
I'll swear you in one time, and if any of your clients are going to speak, I'll swear them in too. So do you swear to tell the truth to the Port Wardens to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Would you now present the Hendrickson application?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Port Wardens. Just to let you know, the public notice signs were up at the proper time frame, and notification was given to the adjacent property owners by mail. We notified the 2 adjacent property owners by certified mail, which is required by MDE. We have filed a permit to MDE, but we have not got approval yet. The proposed work is for Lars and Gay Hendrickson at 129 Lafayette Avenue. We plan to install a boat lift and the associated piles. The piles and the boat lift fit within the setbacks, and just to let you know, in 2017, the Port Wardens approved 2 boat lifts for a different pier configuration. We, in 2019, we replaced the pier in kind and the mooring piles. So the work that we're proposing is inside the mooring piles that were existing. So the encroachment as far as close to the lateral line is less by about 4 feet. And that's pretty much what we're doing.
So on Mr. Butler's behalf, did you recalculate the lateral lines?
I did, and they should be within the building permit package.
They're here. I just wasn't sure they were recalculated.
Yes, sir, they were.
I see the 200-foot radius, but I didn't see the lines it used to. So that implied you drew lines then from the 200-foot radius, but I didn't see where the lines were drawn back to the property intersection, where the ladder line originates.
Okay.
So I was trying to eyeball it, but it's hard to do that.
Well, I can get you a revised lateral line drawing.
John, if you look at drawing 3, I think he's got it drawn on there.
Okay, trying to figure out which drawing to look at.
So it shows up on drawing 3.
Let me look.
I was looking at drawing 4. Let's see, drawing 3.
Oh yeah, there's. I'm sorry.
I don't see it in 3. Oh, wait a minute, is the 3 the one before 4? I assume, right? Let's see here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got
Drawing 3, yes.
harbor lines.
Yeah, I don't see the lateral line calculation there. I see the lateral lines drawn in on various of the drawings, but I don't see and I even see the 200-foot radius because I guess the property's long enough that you need a 200-foot radius, but I don't see the lines used to then calculate the ladder line.
So
Which are
John,
helpful to have.
will you be,
Well-
will you be happy if Dan submits those for deliberation next month?
Yes, but I also have a kind of you mentioned existing pilings in the boat regard to the boat lift. So I was looking again for where
I'll show you.
that is.
Let me, okay, so I don't know if you see that, but this was the drawing 2017 that was approved by the port wardens that had boat lifts on it. And then I'll show you another drawing that is highlights where the existing piles are.
And Mr. Leonard, since those are not in our packet, can you submit those too?
Yeah, I will. But see this right here, this is in the packet, but you see the circles of where the existing mooring piles that were, we removed and replaced appear in the piles in kind. So those are existing mooring piles. One is actually on the ladder line and one is on the neighbor's 5-foot setback line. So our
Which
new
drawing is that, Dan?
that is number 4.
Okay.
We don't have circles on ours.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
there's so much debris on there. I need to enlarge those piles and highlight them so you can see them better.
Yeah, our drawing 4 does not have those.
They're actually there, Gene, but you got to look really, really hard. So I'll make sure that we get a clearer copy and kind of get rid of some of that other stuff so you can see everything that's going on. So you can see, well, you've got drawing number 5. So you see the piles, the proposed boat lift piles are way up there. The closest one's a couple feet from the 5-foot setback and the other one's about 4 or 5 feet. So we're nowhere near the encroachment of what exists there. We're actually less.
Okay, submit an enhanced drawing, which would I think would help,
Yes, sir.
please.
And the drawing that shows the calculation of the ladder lines.
Okay, and I guess
Both of those would help.
I slipped through the cracks, but that was done on that prior application in 2019. So I think that I felt that it wasn't necessary to show you again, but I will.
Thank you.
Okay.
Since you come with us for a lot, assume we have short memories and
Yes, sir.
everyone wasn't here. I was
Yeah,
here.
some of us are new.
Some are new and some of us have short memories,
Yes, sir.
shorter than a new person. Okay, any other questions or comments for the applicant?
I do. I have a question again for Dan. What would be the impact and how far if you were to move the boat lift further in towards shore? I know it starts to get shallow. Could you move it in at all? And how far could you move it in? What the impact be of moving it in closer
Well,
to shore?
I guess you could, but again, you're dealing with shallow water and the state might frown upon the shading in that area. So, I mean, how much do you think would need to be moved in to make it?
I don't really know. I know there was a comment about the kind of the view shed, which isn't really one of the port wardens jurisdictional areas, but I still think, if somebody wants to raise that comment, it's worth exploring. Could it be moved,
Yeah.
closer in?
Well, the issue is the see this, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a boat that normally docks there. And that's kind of where we position the lift to accommodate that boat. I don't think that the boat will navigate in any shallower water, and the boat lift beam draw is about 10 inches. So that restricts you a little bit more. So I tried to do a balancing act to make it all work. But again, we do have a dredging permit off in the distance that we're waiting to go before the Board of Public Works. But we are restricted to not dig any further than that 3-foot contour. So we're not going to get any deeper in beyond that 3 feet. It all occurs from that point forward. But when you square the lift up, you see where the piles are. So if you move it towards shore, it's not going to it'll get further away from the ladder line, but it'll get very shallow and make it more difficult.
And it won't make a significant difference in how it looks anyway. So
Not really. And it's like, there's been a boat there for years and years and years, so it's no different than the boat, other than it's going to be elevated.
Right.
And keep in mind that straight across the creek from there is a 40,000-pound lift with almost a 50-foot boat on it. So if you're worried about a panoramic view from the park, I mean, the other one is much more in your face, I guess you would say.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yes,
Any
sir.
other questions? If not, we have a request for Mr. Garretts to testify with you, we will admit him in and hear his comments. And so Mr. Terry Averill and Ms. Garretts both submitted written comments concerned about the view shed.
All right, good. There I am. Good evening.
Ms. Garretts, do you swear to tell the truth to the Port Wardens to the best of your ability upon penalty of perjury?
I do. Thank you.
Okay, please proceed.
So I'm going to just read my statement, if you don't mind. I think that's the best way to get through this. So good evening, Mr. Godley, members of the Board of Port Wardens. My name is Dirk Garretts. I live on Lafayette Avenue. I've been in Murray Hill probably now for about 15 or 16 years and lived in the city for probably close to 30 now. I'm submitting comments related to this case 2021-001 at 129 Lafayette Avenue for a boat lift. The subject property directly abuts Lafayette Park, a public park maintained by the city's Parks and Recreation Department. My spouse, Terry Averill, and I maintain parts of this park through the annual Greenscape program, which many of you probably know about. That's coming up in April 24th, and the fall cleanups, as well as we do regular weeding during the summertime. So it's sort of become our little hobby to maintain the park, make it look a little nicer for public events. I'm also active in the community association. So I'm very familiar with the park. It's become very popular, particularly now that they've added a new floating dock and there's better access for paddleboarders and kayakers. And I'm a paddleboarder. I usually go in though at the end of Acton's Cove is where I typically go in. But our main concern here is we're not really opposed to this application, but our main concern is the impact that the boat lift may have on the public view of Old Women's Cove and Spa Creek beyond. Of course, the boat lift itself isn't really going to create the issue. It's more once you place a boat on it. And, you know, as I mentioned, Lafayette Park has become very popular. I think a lot of parks have become more popular, especially during the pandemic. And Lafayette Avenue is also a very heavily traveled route for pedestrians, particularly kind of running between Maryland Hall and downtown. And what's kind of unique about Lafayette Park is, you know, we don't have that many parks on our waterfront. Usually they're street end parks, but this is a park that's actually not only parallel to the street, but it's also parallel to the shoreline. So you get a nice expanse of frontage there for public access. And I kind of feel like to fully assess the impact of the boat lift, an illustration would need to have been included in the application just to demonstrate what it would look like if a boat was actually on the lift. And I noticed, you know, of course, I'm very aware of the new pier that was installed. It's pretty extensive. It extended further than we had expected. And since that pier was constructed, and that's very recent, there's now a much larger watercraft there than was ever before. And I don't know if this is the one that's planned to be lifted or not. But I do feel that there's going to be a significant impact, not just really so much to the neighbors, but really to the public at large. You know, access to public lands and waterways has increased significantly in recent years, and especially during the pandemic. And I understand that leaders in City Hall and on the City Council are interested in preserving, enhancing, and increasing public access to our waterways. So really, I'm just asking that you take a look at this. I know Mr. Butler's already made a comment about this, and I appreciate that. You know, if there's some creative way, maybe you could shift it back a little bit further just to preserve these views, because, you know, once this is approved, then it's going to be there for a long time. And I know there was reference to another boat lift, but that one's fairly close to shore, and it's kind of in a nook there in the park and somewhat blocked by the trees, so it's not quite as apparent as this one I think will be. So so that's really my extent of my comments, and I appreciate you taking these things into account.
Thank you, Mr. Gratz, and also thanks to Mr. Averill for submitting written comments. I just simply want to reiterate, Mr. Butler's comment that unfortunately within the code, we have no authority to restrict boat lifts based on views or aesthetics. It's just not within the code. At the current time, the code, I understand, is being revised, so you might consider making input at some time. So thank you. Are there any other testimony or any questions for Mr. Gratz? If not, the public record is hereby closed except for written comments, which we will take until next month when we will deliberate on that application. The next
Could I say one thing, Gene?
Yeah.
The existing pier was not, the existing pier was removed and replaced in kind, not an inch further, an inch wider. And so were the existing piles. So there's no further encroachment when the pier was replaced. It was replacement in kind.
Thank you. I remember that. So we'll move to the next application, which is Old Town Marina. Again, Dan, I think you're presenting. I don't know if anyone else is going to accompany you or not. If not.
No, sir. So, excuse me.
Is someone going to join you or shall you proceed?
I'll proceed.
Okay.
So good evening, Port Wardens, and good evening, Chairman. The public notice signs were posted in the proper time frame, and notice was given to the adjacent property owners in proper time frame. This is the Old Town Marina at One Shipwright. We plan to remove 2 existing mooring piles and install 8 new mooring piles. And we're taking the mooring piles and moving them out to increase the length of the slips a little bit. And that was the reason for that. And the 2 mooring piles that we're removing, we're making the slip a little bit wider. So that's the reason for what we're doing.
I have no questions. Fellow Port Wardens, anyone have any further questions? Is there any other testimony from the public? If not, we will admit the staff report into the record.
There's no comments from the public as of yet.
Thank you, Kevin. We will admit the staff report into the record, and we will close the record for public testimony except for written submissions, which we will consider at our deliberations next month. The next application is 920 Creek Drive.
Again, I'm Dan Larian, representing Lawrence Burrows and Dawn Widener Burrows at 920 Creek Drive. We plan to remove and relocate 3 existing mooring piles, remove a PWC boat lift, and relocate to the other side of the pier. Construct 17 feet of replacement bulkhead. And although this doesn't have anything to do with the Port Wardens, we're going to remove 200 square feet of deck that's on land to construct the bulkhead. The mooring piles that we propose, the 3 mooring piles, are placed on the ladder line. We have an exhibit that's been sent to Kevin, granting permission from the Isabels and the Burrells to share those piles on the ladder line. And that's the extent of the work.
Dan, my question is, realizing 940 is right next to 920, which you will get to next. And there was, between them, there was a 938 address.
Yes, sir.
So I got a little confused about the integration of the 2 properties. And I take it they integrate along that shared lateral line?
Yes, sir.
And there are only 2 properties, not 3.
So what's happening in the background, Gene, is that property was bought by the Burrells and the Isabels, and it's in for subdivision right now, and a piece has been carved off that goes to the Burrells property, and a piece has been carved off that goes to Isabel. So when I get to 940, what we're going to do there is remove both of those piers and put 1 pier that will fit within the setbacks of the new 940 lateral line, property line configuration. So I know it's a little confusing, but Kevin's aware of the subdivision. And so the subdivision cannot be completed unless the piers are removed. So it's like, oh, everything kind of has to flow together to happen all at the same time so that we can do what we're trying to do and complete the subdivision and complete the work that's in the water. The piers have to be removed because you can't have two piers on one property.
Yeah, okay. And all right, now I understand that you're basically integrating 3 properties into 2 and
Yes,
make
sir.
them conform on the water to the lateral lines and the harbor line.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right, that's my only question on 920. Anyone have any other questions on 920? Are there any other members of the public, Kevin, that if
No,
not,
no public comments, and like Dan pointed out, we'd be asking for this to be conditioned on that subdivision being recorded in land records before the permits. So it's just a matter of getting everything to an approvable state. So you're looking for conditional approval on these 2 applications.
okay, we'll make the staff report part of the record. If there's something we need to do to make it conditional at the time we deliberate, Kevin, would you remind us? And I will close the record for public testimony, and we will deliberate next month on what we've received plus any additional written comments. So, Mr. Larian, you're recognized for 940 Creek Drive.
Yes, sir. I'm Dan Larian, representing Osmond and Aud Ismail Living Trust at 940 Creek Drive. We plan to remove 2 existing piers, 670 square feet, remove 1 mooring pile, relocate 3 mooring piles, which are the same 3 mooring piles that we're doing for the barrels because they're joint piles, remove a PWC lift and a boat lift, construct 48 linear feet of replacement timber bulkhead, construct a 6 by 22 foot pier with a 10 by 20 platform, a 3 by 20 catwalk, a 3 by 20 tapered finger pier, and a 24,000 pound boat lift. We also are going to remove the existing steps that are on the property on 940, and we're going to remove the deck that's behind the bulkhead, which again is a building permit issue, not a Port Wardens issue, but that all has to be done so that we only have 1 access to 1 pier, and we have the ability to put the dead man pile in for the bulkhead construction. That's why we're removing the deck. So we have the lateral line shown there. They have 75 feet of property. There's 2 slips shown, and there's, I don't know, just in the past, I know we're not going back, we're going forwards, but in the past, there was a pier that was approved at 940 that had a lateral line, and it was built. And then a few years later, we were asked to do a modification to the pier. We used that same lateral line configuration to do the modification. The Port Wardens approved it. But we're here before you today with the proper lateral line so that everything fits. And I don't see an issue with that. John shouldn't. So I think we're okay.
And the 1 finger pier goes right up next to the harbor line?
The 1 pier is right up. That's the one where the 3 piles are. There's no other way to access, that slip without a way to get on and off the boat. So that was kind of there for safety reasons. Yes, sir. It does go up to the lateral line.
Okay. Any other questions from our Port Wardens? Hearing no question, I'll make the staff report part of the record, and we will close the record to public testimony and keep it open for written testimony or written submissions until next month when we will deliberate. So thank you very much, Mr. Larian.
Thank you for your time.
We are now going to move into closed session. And at this time, I would entertain a motion pursuant to annotated Code of Maryland General Provisions, Article 3-5B7, go into closed session.
Take him out first.
Is there
Make a
second?
motion.
I second that motion.
Then second. Any discussion? If not, the purpose of entering into the closed session is to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice regarding the Port Warden's responsibilities pursuant to its rules of procedure and Title 15 of the City Code. Let me see. I have Gary Perrin still in here, and we're moving into closed session. So before we move into it, can we be sure we're only the Port Warden?
We also go off of YouTube, right?
Yeah, bear with me just one moment. I'll get you guys
Yeah.
off.
Okay.
There is one question, Mr. Chair, and is Alderman Arnett. What is the policy on Alderman Arnett being present?
I yield to the Assistant City Attorney to advise us.
I mean, yeah, it's ultimately up to the chair, but I think because the alderman doesn't really have any, he is here for purposes of an application that was already deliberated upon and decided upon. There's no need, no offense, Alderman Arnett, if you're listening, there's no need for him to be a part of the closed session because that's not something that the legislative branch is going to generally be involved in. We're talking rules of procedure and things like that. So it doesn't really concern the city council, but I do want to make sure before we go off of YouTube, before the alderman, I don't know if there's anyone else that can hear, that there's a roll call that's taken by Tammy so that every member of the Port Wardens has to vocalize that they are basically in agreement with going into closed session.
I'm agreement to go into closed session. Scott Anderson.
Likewise.
John Butler, agreement to go into closed session.
Willie Sampson, you in agreement to go into closed session? Gene Godley's in agreement. Willie, are you in agreement to go into closed session?
You're on mute.
There you go.
You agree to go into closed session, Willie?
Yes, I'd take that as a yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion passes. So